Hello everyone, my name is Rufat and today we will talk about trigonometric functions and how to simplify these functions. Let's start. So we have four main trigonometric functions such as sine x, cosine x, tangent x, and cotangent x. So in order to understand what's trig function, you have to use right triangle. Right triangle, so that's, let's say, your angle x. So sine x is always opposite leg, that's opposite leg, opposite to angle x. It's opposite leg divided by hypotenuse, that's your hypotenuse. Cosine x is always adjacent leg, that's your adjacent leg, divided by a hypotenuse. Tangent x is sine divided by cosine, so it will be just opposite leg divided by adjacent. And cotangent x is 1 divided by tangent, like reciprocal of tangent. So it's vice versa. It's just adjacent divided by opposite. As you can see from here, x is acute angle. X is acute angle, but x can be also right angle, obtuse angle, or angle of full rotation. It can be any angle. And we have a table with basic angles, where we have 0 degrees, and 360, 30 degrees, 45, 60, 90, 180, and 270 degrees. That's the basic angles, and we have value of these trig functions here. For example, sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. Tangent of 0 degrees or 360 is 0. Cotangent of 0 is undefined. Why? Because cotangent is cosine divided by sine. Here, 1 divided by 0. We cannot divide 1 by 0. It's math problem. So we say that cotangent here is undefined. Okay, but what if also here you can see that here also it's written in radians, so we know what's radian. Pi radians is exactly 180 degrees. So you can write 60 degrees as pi/3, for example. Now, what if, for example, you have angles such as 150 degrees, 210 degrees, or 315 degrees, and so on. The angles that we don't have in our table. So here it's obvious that we have to simplify our trig function. How to simplify trig function is our main topic of that lesson. Let's start. First of all, we have to talk about quadrants. So imagine that your angle is starting here in 0 degrees, starting here, and you have to know that if you have positive angles such as 40 degrees, 120 degrees, and so on, you have to rotate this blue line, this angle, counterclockwise. So for example, 40 degrees will be here, approximately. 40 degrees will be here. So it's first quadrant. So here it's 90 degrees, exactly 90 degrees. Then obtuse angle, second quadrant. Then third quadrant. Here we have angles such as 210 degrees, 250 degrees, and so on. And the fourth quadrant, it's between 270 and 360 degrees. Okay, in first quadrant, all trig functions are positive. I mean, sine, cosine, tangent, and cotangent, they are positive. In second quadrant only sine is positive. In third quadrant tangent is positive and cotangent. In fourth quadrant only cosine is positive. So these properties we'll use in future when we will solve problems where we have to simplify our trig function. Okay, now we can talk about simplification of trig function. So here we can divide our rule by 4 steps. So here we have rule how to simplify trig function. First rule. You have to exclude angles of full rotation. I mean 360 degrees, 720 degrees, and so on. You can write in radians, 2 pi, 4 pi, and so on. So why we can exclude them, you can ask? Because, for example, you have angle, this angle, let's say 45 degrees. That is 45 degrees. If you will add angle of full rotation, so your point, your angle again will be here. So nothing will change. Your value of your function again the same. It means that we can exclude all angles of full rotation. They do not have any important role here. That's the first step. Second step. You have to have reference angle such as 90 degrees, 180 degrees, 270 degrees, and 360 degrees, one of them. It depends on your quadrant. For example, if you have angle, let's say 150 degrees, which is in second quadrant, between 90 and 180 degrees. It means that you can use as a reference angle only 90 or 180. You cannot use one of these 2 angles. So for example, instead of 150 degrees, you can write 90 degrees plus 60 degrees, or you can write 180 degrees minus 30 degrees. It doesn't matter for us. You will get the same result at the final stage. That is your second step. Third step, you check sign of your function. Okay, for example, you have sine, so you simplified your function. I mean, you exclude angle of full rotation, you used reference angle, and you have, for example, sine 90 degrees plus 60 degrees. Okay, you say this is the second quadrant. Here, sine is positive, so we put a positive sign. Or for example, you have tangent of 270 degrees plus 45 degrees. You say, okay, that's the fourth quadrant. Here, tangent is negative. So you check sign of your function. That's the third step. And the last and the easiest step is fourth step. Here we have to change your function sine to cosine and cosine to sine, or tangent to cotangent, cotangent to tangent if you have a reference angle such as 90 degrees or 270 degrees. I mean pi over 2 or 3 pi over 2. So if your reference angle, like here in this case, for example, is 270 degrees, you just write at the final stage, instead of tangent, you will write cotangent. So 180 and 360 degrees, they don't change your function. So that's all. We have 4 steps. Now let's solve some questions. For example, sine of 510 degrees. So you say, okay, here I have angle of full rotation. Because 510 is 360 plus 150, we can exclude this angle. So it will be just sine of 150 degrees. That was your first step. Now about other steps. So sine 150 degrees, you can write whether sine of 90 degrees plus 60 degrees, because it's on the second quadrant between 90 and 180, or you can write it as 180 degrees minus 30 degrees. Okay, that was your second step. You can write one of them, it doesn't matter. As I mentioned before, you will get the same result. Third step, you check sign of your function. So let's solve first of all this question, this one. This is the second quadrant. Why? Because of 90 degrees. 90 degrees plus, you will be in second quadrant. So you say, okay, it's plus, it's positive. And the last step, we have to, if we have 90 degrees or 270 degrees, we have to change sine to cosine. And this angle you just copy. And from table, we know that it's square root of 3 divided by 2. Oh, sorry, it's 1 over 2. I'm sorry, it's 1 over 2. Or you can use 180 minus 30 degrees. It doesn't matter. So it's again second quadrant. Here sine is positive, but 180 doesn't change your function. So it will be again sine. And just copy this angle 30 degrees. And from table, we know that it's 1 over 2. In my opinion, it's better to use always 180 degrees or 360 degrees. Why? Because, as I mentioned before, 90 and 270 change your function. So in exam, you can forget this step and your answer will be not correct. So try to use only 180 and 360 degrees. That's all about trig functions and simplification of trigonometric functions. Thank you for your attention.